Silence is not weakness, it is a weapon. And if you have never learned to use it, you have been disarmed your entire life. You speak to be understood, to be accepted, to be seen. Yet every unnecessary word quietly hands your power to others. What if the most feared presence in a room is not the loudest voice, but the one that says nothing and still controls the air? Today, you will confront a truth few are ready to face. Silence does not beg for respect, it commands it. This video explores why withholding words creates unease, authority, and psychological dominance, and why most people are terrified of doing it. If this resonates, comment the phrase "I choose silence" below. Subscribe, like this video, and stay until the end, because the final revelation will force you to question every time you spoke when you should have remained silent. Long before modern psychology gave names to power dynamics, strategists understood the force of silence. In Renaissance courts, where a single sentence could end a life, those who survived learned restraint. Words were currency, and silence was leverage. Philosophers observed that the mind fills empty space with fear, projection, and interpretation, often revealing more than speech ever could. Over time, this knowledge was buried beneath noise, productivity, culture, and the illusion that visibility equals value. You were taught to explain yourself, to justify your presence, to speak so you would not disappear. Yet this constant expression mirrors a deeper wound of our era, the fear of being insignificant. Silence threatens the ego because it removes control, and that is why it was recast as weakness. In truth, silence has always been the language of authority, misunderstood by those who confuse volume with power. The first truth you must accept is uncomfortable. Most of what you say is not communication. It is compensation. You speak to reduce tension, to soothe anxiety, to prove your value, to protect yourself from judgment. Silence threatens these defenses because it removes your familiar tools. When you say nothing, you cannot hide behind explanations, humor, intelligence, or charm. You stand exposed. And that exposure is precisely why silence carries such psychological weight. The human mind is wired to interpret gaps as danger. When someone speaks too much, they reveal their position. When someone remains silent, they become unreadable. Unreadability creates fear, curiosity, and projection. People begin to imagine motives, intentions, and power where none has been declared. You have seen this in rooms where one person barely speaks, yet everyone orients themselves around them. Their stillness bends the atmosphere, not because they dominate overtly, but because no one can locate them. Silence disrupts the social contract most people unconsciously follow. That contract says, I speak, you respond. I explain, you reassure. I reveal, you validate. When you break this pattern, others feel destabilized. They do not know where they stand. And in human psychology, uncertainty is more disturbing than bad news. A clear rejection hurts less than ambiguity. Silence creates ambiguity, and ambiguity forces the other person to work. They fill the void with their own insecurities. They wonder if they said something wrong, if they are being judged, if they are losing status. You are no longer reacting to them. They are reacting to you. This is why silence has been associated with authority across history. Authority does not chase understanding. It does not rush to clarify. It does not scramble to be liked. True authority assumes its position without argument. When you over-explain, you implicitly place yourself beneath the listener, asking permission to exist. When you justify, you announce doubt. When you rush to respond, you reveal dependence on approval. Silence, when chosen consciously, communicates the opposite. It says, I do not need to fill this space. I am comfortable here. You may not like it, but you will feel it. Most people fear silence because it forces them to confront their own internal noise. When you stop talking, your thoughts grow louder. Doubt creeps in. You start imagining how you are being perceived. This discomfort drives compulsive speech. People talk to escape themselves. But those who master silence learn to sit inside that discomfort without fleeing, and that inner stillness becomes visible externally. Others sense it instinctively. Humans are attuned to emotional regulation. A person who does not rush to react signals control, and control is interpreted as strength. Silence also reverses power dynamics in conflict. In arguments, the one who speaks more loses ground. Every word is a step forward, and the more steps you take, the easier it is to be pushed back. When you respond immediately, you allow the other person to set the frame. Their emotion becomes the center, and you orbit it. But when you pause, when you look at them without answering, something shifts. Their anger has nowhere to land. Their provocation echoes back at them. They begin to feel exposed, even foolish. Silence reflects energy without absorbing it. It does not escalate, but it does not submit either. It waits. And waiting unnerves those who rely on reaction to feel powerful. There is also a deeper psychological mechanism at play. Humans equate scarcity with value. Words that are abundant are discounted. Words that are rare are weighted. When you speak constantly, your voice becomes background noise. When you speak selectively, every sentence carries gravity. People lean in. They listen differently. Silence creates anticipation. It trains others to pay attention. Over time, this rewires how you are perceived. You are no longer someone who reacts. You are someone who decides when to engage. Yet silence is not passivity. This is where many misunderstand it. Passive silence is avoidance, fear disguised as restraint. Powerful silence is deliberate. It is chosen, not forced. It comes from self-possession, not paralysis. The difference lies in intention. Are you silent because you are afraid to speak, or because you have nothing to prove? The same behavior produces radically different energy. Others can sense the difference, even if they cannot articulate it. One repels respect, the other commands it. Silence also exposes the false urgency of modern life. You are conditioned to believe that everything requires an immediate response. Messages, notifications, demands, opinions. This constant reactivity fragments your attention and trains others to expect access to you at all times. When you delay your response, when you do not immediately engage, you reclaim control over your time and your nervous system. This withdrawal is not rudeness, it is sovereignty. And sovereignty, even in small doses, intimidates those who live in constant reaction. There is an unspoken hierarchy in every interaction. It is not always about titles or roles. It is about who adapts to whom. The one who adapts more occupies the lower position. Silence reduces adaptation. You are no longer adjusting your words to manage others' emotions. You are no longer explaining to prevent misunderstanding. You allow others to sit with their interpretation. This does not mean you never clarify. It means you do not rush to. You let meaning emerge instead of forcing it. Consider how children behave around authority. They talk endlessly to peers, but grow quiet around figures they perceive as powerful. This is not because power demands silence, but because silence is associated with power. Adults retain this instinct unconsciously. They become more self-conscious when faced with someone who does not mirror their behavior. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects their own uncertainty. There is also a spiritual dimension to this practice. Silence creates space. Space allows awareness. When you stop filling every moment with sound, you begin to observe rather than perform. You notice patterns, manipulations, Emotional undercurrents. You hear what is not being said. This heightened perception is where real influence begins. You cannot dominate what you do not understand, and you cannot understand while constantly speaking. Yet here is the paradox that unsettles many. Silence does not guarantee respect from everyone. It filters. Those who thrive on control, chaos, or validation will resist it. They may label you cold, arrogant, distant. That reaction reveals more about them than about you. Silence exposes dependency. Those who need constant feedback feel threatened by those who do not provide it. And those who feel threatened often attack. This is the price of restraint. You must be willing to be misunderstood by those who benefit from your explanation. At this stage, a question should be forming in your mind, and it is the one most people avoid. If silence is so powerful, why does it feel so risky? The answer lies in identity. You have been taught to equate self-expression with selfhood. To be silent feels like erasure, but that belief is a construction, not a truth. Your presence does not vanish when you stop speaking. In fact, it intensifies. What fades is the noise, not the self. This is only the surface. There are deeper layers where silence becomes not just a social tactic, but a psychological transformation. Layers where it reshapes desire, fear, and control in ways most people never imagine. But before going there, you must sit with this discomfort and notice how often you speak to escape it. What most people never realize is that silence does not only affect others, it reorganizes you. Once you stop filling every gap with words, something unsettling happens inside. Your ego loses its favorite hiding place. There is no performance, no immediate validation, no quick release of tension through expression. You are left alone with raw awareness. This is why silence feels heavy at first. It strips away the illusion of control that speech provides. Talking gives you the sensation of steering reality, even when you are not. Silence reveals how little control you actually have, and that revelation terrifies the unprepared mind. Here lies the deeper paradox. Silence appears empty, but it is full. It is full of observation, of restraint, of unspoken intention. When you say nothing, you begin to notice how others expose themselves. People reveal their motives, not through what they say, but through how they react to your quiet. Some rush to fill the space. Some grow defensive. Some become aggressive. Others suddenly soften, seeking approval. Silence becomes a diagnostic tool. It shows you who needs control, who needs validation, who fears judgment, and who is comfortable with ambiguity. Speech hides these truths. Silence extracts them. Modern life trains you to believe that visibility equals existence. If you are not speaking, posting, responding, explaining, you fear becoming irrelevant. This is a collective hallucination. Relevance does not come from noise. It comes from impact. And impact requires contrast. Silence creates contrast. Against a backdrop of constant expression, restraint becomes striking. You begin to stand out not because you demand attention, but because you do not. This reverses the usual chase. Instead of pursuing attention, you let it come to you. And attention that comes uninvited carries a different quality. It is charged, it is curious, it is respectful. There is a hidden psychological law at work here. People respect what they cannot easily access. When you are always available, always responsive, always explaining, you become predictable. Predictability breeds comfort, but it also breeds disregard. Silence disrupts predictability. It introduces distance, and distance creates gravity. This does not mean you disappear. It means you choose when to appear. You speak less, but when you do, your words land harder. They are no longer filler. They are signals. The ego resists this shift violently. It tells you that if you do not speak, you will be forgotten. That if you do not defend yourself, you will be diminished. That if you do not assert, you will be dominated. These fears come from a fragile sense of self that depends on reaction. Silence starves that dependency. Over time, you begin to feel less compelled to manage how you are perceived. You stop trying to control narratives. You allow misunderstandings to exist without rushing to correct them. This feels like surrender, but it is actually strength. You are no longer negotiating your worth. There is also a moral illusion that must be dismantled. Many people believe that explaining themselves is a form of honesty, and that silence is deceptive. In reality, constant explanation is often manipulation disguised as virtue. It is an attempt to guide perception, to soften judgment, to preempt rejection. Silence, by contrast, is honest in its refusal to perform. It says, without saying it, that you trust your position enough not to embellish it. That trust unsettles those who rely on persuasion to survive. In power dynamics, silence functions like a pause in music. The pause is not empty. It heightens tension. It makes the next note matter more. In conversation, your silence makes the other person lean forward psychologically. They search your face, your posture, your energy. They listen harder when you finally speak. You have trained them without instruction. This is how authority forms organically, not through dominance, but through presence. There is a reason intimidation often comes without words. The most threatening figures do not explain themselves. They do not justify their boundaries. They do not announce their intentions. They allow others to infer. An inference magnifies fear. The mind always imagines something worse than what is said explicitly. Silence lets imagination work in your favor. Not because you are cruel, but because you are opaque. Transparency comforts. Opacity commands caution. Yet this practice reveals another uncomfortable truth. Many of your relationships are built on noise. When you become quieter, some connections weaken. This is not a loss, it is exposure. Those who needed your constant reassurance drift away. Those who fed on your explanations grow restless. Silence acts as a filter. It removes dynamics rooted in dependency and leaves behind those based on mutual respect. This can feel lonely at first, but it is a cleaner loneliness than the exhaustion of constant performance. Silence also confronts your fear of judgment. When you speak less, you give others more space to think whatever they want. This lack of control is deeply unsettling. But here is the hidden liberation. People are already judging you. Your words rarely change that. What changes is your relationship to their judgment. Silence teaches you that you can survive misunderstanding, that you do not collapse when not approved. This resilience radiates outward. Others sense it. They test you less when they realize their opinions no longer move you. There is a subtle shift that occurs when silence becomes habitual. You stop reacting emotionally as quickly. You pause not only in speech, but in thought. You notice impulses before acting on them. This creates a gap between stimulus and response. That gap is where freedom lives. Most people are enslaved by immediacy. They feel, they speak, they are provoked, they react. Silence inserts delay. Delay restores choice. Choice restores power. At this level, silence becomes more than a tactic. It becomes a way of inhabiting the world. You begin to conserve energy. You speak with intention. You no longer waste words on people who are not listening. You stop arguing with those committed to misunderstanding you. You recognize that not every thought deserves expression, and not every battle deserves engagement. This discernment is rare, and rarity attracts both respect and resentment. There is also a darker illusion you must confront. The belief that being understood is a prerequisite for peace. It is not. Many people exhaust themselves trying to be fully seen, fully known, fully validated. Silence teaches you that peace comes from self-clarity, not external comprehension. When you understand yourself, you need fewer words. When you trust yourself, you do not chase agreement. This inner alignment is what others perceive as calm authority. But do not romanticize this path. Silence requires discipline. It demands that you tolerate discomfort without fleeing into explanation. It asks you to sit with tension instead of dissolving it prematurely. This is why most people abandon it. They mistake relief for resolution. They speak to feel better, not to be effective. Silence delays relief, but it produces transformation. Here is the final tension of this section, and it is one you must hold without resolving yet. Silence gives you power, but it also removes your excuses. You can no longer blame misunderstanding on poor communication. You can no longer hide behind verbosity. Your presence becomes the message. This responsibility is heavy, but it is also what separates those who command respect from those who seek it. In the next part, this understanding will be grounded into action. Silence will stop being an abstract concept and become something you can practice deliberately without becoming distant, passive, or cold. Because silence, when mastered, is not withdrawal from life. It is entry into a deeper form of influence. Silence only becomes power when it is practiced with precision. Without structure, it collapses into avoidance or stiffness. So the first application is not to speak less randomly, but to speak less intentionally. Begin by inserting a pause before every response that carries emotional charge. Not a theatrical pause, not a manipulative one, but a real pause where you feel the impulse to explain, defend, or react, and you do nothing for a few seconds. This small delay breaks the automatic loop most people live in. You will feel tension rise in your chest or throat. That is the ego demanding release. Do not obey it. Let the sensation pass. What remains is clarity. From that clarity, decide whether speech is necessary. Most of the time, it is not. The second practice is selective speech. Decide in advance that not every situation deserves your words. Many conversations are not dialogues, but traps designed to extract reaction. Complaints that go in circles. Provocations disguised as questions. Debates where no one seeks truth. Silence is how you opt out without confrontation. You do not announce your withdrawal. You simply stop feeding the exchange. This will initially feel rude to you because you were trained to equate politeness with self-erasure. Rewire that belief. Respect does not require explanation. Boundaries do not require justification. A powerful exercise is the reduction ritual. For 1 week, commit to cutting your daily speech by a noticeable margin. Not with everyone, but in non-essential contexts. At work, speak only when your input changes the outcome. In social settings, let others fill the space. Observe how often people talk to relieve their own discomfort, not to connect. Notice how your silence changes the rhythm of interaction. You will see people become more animated, more nervous, or more curious around you. This is data. Do not react to it. Study it. Another application is reclaiming response time. You are not obligated to reply immediately to messages, demands, or emotional bids. Delay is not neglect. It is regulation. When you answer instantly, you train others to expect instant access. When you take time, you reset the hierarchy. Start small. Wait minutes instead of seconds, then hours instead of minutes. Use that time not to craft the perfect reply, but to feel whether a reply is even needed. Many issues dissolve without your intervention. Silence must also be practiced internally. Mental silence is the foundation of external restraint. Each time you rehearse arguments in your head, You are already speaking, just without witnesses. This mental noise fuels reactive speech. Begin noticing when your mind is narrating, defending, proving. Interrupt it. Return to sensation, breath, posture, presence. The quieter your inner world becomes, the less compelled you are to fill the outer one. There is a crucial distinction you must maintain. Silence is not emotional shutdown. You are not suppressing feeling. You are regulating expression. Feel fully, but express selectively. When something genuinely matters, speak clearly and briefly. No preamble, no over-explanation. Let your words stand on their own. People trust statements more than speeches. The shorter your message, the harder it is to distort. In conflict, apply the mirror principle. When someone confronts you emotionally, reflect without adding. If they accuse, you do not defend immediately. You listen, you nod. You allow silence to stretch. This forces them to hear themselves. Often, their intensity collapses under its own weight. If a response is required, keep it minimal and factual. Emotion belongs to them. Do not carry it for them with words. Expect resistance. People accustomed to your availability will test this new boundary. They may escalate, provoke, or guilt you. This is not a sign you are doing it wrong. It is confirmation that your silence is changing the dynamic. Stay consistent. Do not explain your shift. Explanations reopen the door you just closed. One of the most overlooked applications is knowing when to break silence. Silence is powerful because it is rare, not because it is constant. When you choose to speak, do so decisively. Eye contact steady. Voice calm. Words few. This contrast magnifies impact. People will remember what you say because they are not used to hearing it. There will be moments where silence costs you comfort. You may be misunderstood. You may be labeled distant. Accept this. Comfort is cheap. Authority is not. Over time, those labels fade, replaced by a different perception. Composure, gravity, control. The ultimate obstacle is fear of losing connection. But silence does not destroy real connection. It destroys performative connection. What remains is quieter, slower, but deeper. Relationships that survive your silence are built on presence, not noise. If you practice this daily, something fundamental shifts. You stop chasing respect and begin attracting it. Not because you demand it, but because you no longer leak yourself through words. You become contained, and containment is the silent signature of power. Now sit with this. Notice how often you are about to speak. And ask yourself one final question before the conclusion arrives. If silence already holds this much force, what kind of life emerges when it becomes your natural state rather than a strategy? You have now seen what most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence refined. It is the moment where you stop leaking yourself into the world and begin standing within it. Throughout this journey, you have uncovered why words are often used as armor, why explanation becomes a crutch, and why restraint unsettles those who depend on reaction to feel powerful. Silence reorganizes power, not by force, but by withdrawal. It removes you from the economy of validation and places you in a position of choice. You no longer react to life. You let life reveal itself to you. When you speak less, you observe more. When you observe more, you understand more. And when you understand more, you are no longer easily manipulated. Fear, respect, curiosity, and gravity emerge naturally around those who do not rush to fill space. Not because they intimidate deliberately, but because they are no longer predictable. The world listens differently to those who do not beg to be heard. Silence sharpens your edges. It clarifies your intent. It filters your relationships and exposes where your energy has been wasted. This path is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about becoming precise. It is about learning that not every emotion deserves expression, not every thought deserves a voice, and not every challenge deserves engagement. Silence teaches discernment. And discernment is the foundation of authority. When you finally speak, your words carry weight because they are no longer inflated by fear. But here is the question you must take with you, and it is not comfortable. How much of your life has been shaped by the need to explain yourself? How many choices were driven by the fear of being misunderstood? Silence offers you a different path, one where your presence speaks before your mouth ever opens. If this message resonated, engage with it. Leave a comment with the phrase, "I choose silence," and observe what it stirs within you. Like this video, subscribe, and stay close to this work, because mastery does not come from knowing these truths once, but from living them daily. And remember this final truth: the moment you stop speaking to be accepted, you begin to be respected.